We're on Chapter 4, Lesson 5, Convert Measurement Units. Today's lesson is going to be about setting up proportions. So proportions, which I call line equal line, all it is equivalent fractions with a label. The labels are crucial in this. It doesn't matter which you put on the top or the bottom as long as you are consistent with your labels. Alright, let's look at the real world problem. Just in case you missed it, we're on page 289. The table shows the approximate weight in tons of several large land animals. 1 ton is equivalent to 2 pounds. So I can write that as 1 ton is equal to 2,000 pounds, or I can write that as LB and a ton down here. 2,000 is equal to 1 ton. In the lowercase, we would call that a unit rate because 1 is in the denominator. But it doesn't matter. I'm still portraying the same thing. 1 ton is 2,000 pounds. So in our table, if we know 1 ton is 2,000 pounds, 4 is 8, 5 would be 10,000, and 8 would be 16,000. So I could solve any problem. In this case, if I said 12,000 pounds, 2 goes into 12,000 6 times. 1 times 6 is 6, so we know that's 6 tons. And then if I want the reverse, if I were to say 9 tons, I would multiply that times 2,000 and I would get 18,000. So again, my proportion helps me, but the label is the most important. In this case, we have a linear function. For every ton, it's 2,000 pounds. So we draw our dots. We connect our dots, and we know that we have a linear function. Okay, turn the page. So we're first going to convert large units to smaller units. In this case, we have some customary conversions that you should know. For length, we have 1 foot is 12 inches, 1 yard is 3 feet, 1 mile is 280 feet. How do you remember that one? 5 tomatoes. 528 feet is 1 mile. 5 tomatoes. For weights, we have 1 pound is 16 ounces, 1 ton is 2,000 pounds. Capacity, 1 cup is 8 fluid ounces, 1 pint is 2 cups, 1 quart is 2 pints, 1 gallon is 4 quarts. So unit rate, again, is where the denominator is 1. So in the case of feet in yards, 3 feet is 1 yard. I can still flip it and convey the same thing by saying yards on top, feet on bottom. 1 yard is to 3 feet, as long as I'm consistent with my labels. Labels are so important when you're doing these conversions. All right, let's look at the first example. Okay, in the first example, we have 20 feet, and we want to put it into inches. Notice that they've got this as a multiplication problem. I just really believe that proportions are the easiest way to solve these, so I'm going to solve it using a proportion. I'm going to label it, and again, it doesn't matter where I put the feet and the inches. I'm going to put inches on top and feet on bottom. And I know that 12 inches is 1 foot, and I call this my CF. CF stands for conversion. I'm going to put this over here. CF stands for conversion factor. That's my relationship. That's a known fact. It's what we know about feet and yards. And then my other one is what I need to solve for. In this case, I have 20 feet. Now I have a choice of putting it at the top or the bottom. All I have to do is look at the label. In this case, I put feet on the bottom. I have to stay in the same row. I will put 20 feet here, which means I have to solve this proportion on the top. Now, I can either cross, multiply, divide, or look for a relationship. In this case, I have the 1. 1 times 20 is 20. 12 times 20 is 240. So the answer to that is 240 feet. So again, let's all go ahead and put proportions down at the bottom. Again, the most important thing is our label. In this case, we have feet and yards. I'll just put feet here, yards here. We got pounds and tons, and we got quarts and pints. Get it, gotta go. Come back when you're done. Pause the video. See you soon. Okay, so for A, I got 108 feet. For B, I got 1,500 pounds. And for C, I got 3 pints. I want to talk a little bit about these, though. If I put this in the wrong place or decided that I needed to simplify things, I could really mess this problem up if I didn't know what I was looking for. I could say 3 goes into 36 and put 18 here and say the answer is 18 feet. That doesn't even make, 12 feet. If I were to go 3 goes into 36, that would be 12. That would not make any logical sense. We know that 12 feet is not going to make 36 yards. There better be a lot more feet. Let's look at the ton. In this case, we have a fraction. So we're setting this up as a cross multiplication problem. I'm going to cross multiply 2,000 times 3/4. So 2,000 times 3/4. 4 goes into 2,000 500 times. 500 times 3 is 1,500. And again, I'm going to do the same thing with the quarts and the pint. 1 quart is 2 pints. I'm going to cross multiply 2 times 3/2. Look, the 2's disappear. All I have left is my 3. And again, I will always put boxes around my unknown quantity, the one I'm trying to solve for, so that I don't make silly mistakes. In a proportion, you will always be given 3 numbers, and you have to solve for the remaining number. When you're converting, always think about setting it up as a proportion with labels. Labels are the #1 thing that will prevent you from making silly mistakes. Turn the page. So here we have a word problem. Marco mixes 1/4 a cup of fertilizer with soil before planting each bulb. How many fluid ounces of fertilizer does he use per bulb? And notice again, they're going to set that up as a multiplication problem, which to me just seems very complicated. I would prefer just to set this up as a proportion. We know that there's 8 fluid ounces to 1 cup, and we have 1/4 of a cup. So in this case, oh, sorry. Did anybody notice that I put that in the wrong place? Very good. All right, I looked at it and I thought that doesn't make any logical sense to me. It's because I put it in the wrong spot. We have 1/4 of a cup. Cups is on the lower row, so that has to stay consistent. And again, I'm going to cross multiply 8/1 times 1/4. 4 goes into 8 2 times. So my answer is 2. 2 what? 2 fluid ounces. Get it, gotta go. See you soon. Pause the video. Did you get 660 feet? Again, I set it up as a proportion. 5280, 5 tomatoes, 5280 feet is 1 mile. I'm looking for the feet for 1/8 of a mile. I'm going to cross multiply. When going from larger to smaller units, you will always multiply. Why? Because you have more of them. Now we're going to do the reverse. We're going to go from smaller units to larger units, which means we're going to have to divide. We're going to have to divide. All right, let's look at these. Okay. So again, when we're going from smaller to larger units, we're going to divide. And again, I'm always going to set these up as proportion because the math of it is easy if you do that. So we're converting 15 quarts to gallons. I always put my conversion factor over here, and again, it doesn't matter which I put as long as I'm consistent. So we need to go back to the page 290 and look for gallons and quarts, and we find that 4 quarts make 1 gallon. In this case, I have 15 quarts, and I have to figure out how many gallons that is. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is the relationship of a fraction. We know in the end this is a fraction problem. So we need to ensure that our fractions are equivalent. In this case, we have a big number over a little number, a big number over a little number. In order to get a little number, the only operation I can do will be division. So 4 goes into 15, how many times? 3, that's a 12. I have 30, goes into that 7, that's 28, that's 20, put a decimal, and I have a 5. So I know that 4 goes into 15 3.75 times. And I can either express that as a decimal or as a fraction. 3.75 is the same as saying 3 3/4 of a gallon. So again, these problems are so much easier if you set them up to as a proportion and put your labels. We have feet, miles, ounces, lbs, cups, and pints. Please refer to the conversion chart on page 290 when solving these problems. Pause the video. Okay, so let's just finish the business up here. I just want to make sure that we knew that we put this back in just to make sure that our relationship, big, little, looks good. All right, I got 1/2 of a mile because I just looked at the two numbers and said, oh, I can cut that in half, so I know that's 1/2 a mile. The next one, number F, I actually had to do the division. 16 goes into 106 full times with a remainder of 4, and I thought, well, instead of working this as a decimal, I can just use that as a remainder. 4 over 16 is a fourth, and I know 1/4 is 0.25. So I could have written that as 6 1/4 pound or 6.25 pounds. And the last one, 2 cups is 1 pint, so 3 cups is 1.5 pints. Turn the page. So we always know we have word problems, and in this case we have to read the word problem so that we know what to do. Yumika needs 4.5 feet of fabric to make a costume for play. How many yards of fabric does she need? So I know I'm talking about feet and yards, so that's what I'm going to first do is put my conversion. I know 3 feet is 1 yard. That's the most important part, is making sure that you put the right conversion factor. 3 feet, 1 yard. Then I go back to the problem and I see, what did they tell me? I have 4.5 feet, so I know that has to go on the top. The question is, do I want to set this up as a decimal problem or as a fraction problem? In this case, since we haven't talked about dividing fractions, I'm going to go ahead and set it up as a division problem. Cross, multiply, divide, so I know I have 4.5. How many times am I going to get 3 out of that? 1. That's a 3, 15.5. So again, because it was expressed as a fraction, I'm going to put it back in as a fraction. That's 1.5. 1.5. And then you have to finish it up with what it is. In this case, it's yards. Yumika needs 1.5 yards of fabric to make these costumes. All right, time for you to do the guided practice. See you soon. Pause the video. Okay, so check your answers. And again, some of these were fairly easy to do by setting them up as fractions and then crossing out when you're simplifying. So the ones that were a little bit more tricky, like number 5, I knew that that would be a repeater, but it wanted to the nearest pound. It ended up 666.6 repeat, and I know to the nearest pound would be 667. And then the other one I thought about in terms of fractions. I know that 12 goes into 36 3 perfect times, but it's 1 inch shy because it was 35 inches. So I know that's 2 full feet with just 11 remaining out of 12. And again, round it to the nearest would be 3 feet. So again, setting up a proportion is the easiest way to solve these problems. Thank you. See you soon.